Stand by to fall in, Polk County. This is today's veteran. Hello and welcome, and on behalf of everyone at Polk County Office of Veteran Services, thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Brian Lacey, and on this installment of today's Veteran, we will talk about how veterans and their families can start with their hurricane preparation plans. Your home is one of your largest investments, so protecting it against natural disasters is probably on top of your priorities. Life in Florida means living with potential hazards from hurricanes, which include powerful winds, heavy rainfall, storm surges, coastal and inland flooding, rip currents, tornadoes, and landslides. Tropical storms, including hurricanes, at any level can cause significant damage to your home and property, from missing shingles and fence posts to collapsed roofs and walls. Knowing what to expect and being prepared for the storm can make all the difference. Joining us in studio is Travis Garrett. He's the Emergency Management Director for the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital in Tampa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get right into this. Let's talk a little bit about your emergency management career. Talk a little bit about where you come from and where you're at now, if you would.
I've been working with emergency management since 1988. I joined the Navy as a damage controlman, which is the equivalent of a civilian emergency manager. Did 22 years active duty, working in my passion, my dream job. As I came closer to the time of retirement, I had to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? And I was happy doing what I was doing already, and I started looking for jobs in the emergency management field. And I became aware of the Department of Veterans Affairs Emergency Management Program. I wasn't even aware that the VA even focused on emergency management. So I found a position, I applied, and I was hired. I've been with the VA for 7 years now, and it's my dream. It's my dream job. I'm even happier doing it with the VA than I was in being active duty.
Now, when you speak emergency management from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and especially in the Tampa region, what is it exactly that you're working on?
Well, our first and our primary mission is to make sure that the Department of Veterans Affairs is prepared for any type of emergency or disaster, whether it be a natural disaster or even if it's some type of man-made disaster or act of terrorism. Keep in mind, you know, the care for veterans doesn't stop when things get bad. It actually intensifies, and so we need to make sure that we're prepared. We have a fourth mission of the VA, which is actually to provide support to our community partners and our entire nation's healthcare system in the event of a large-scale disaster. And that's our fourth mission. And so what do? We make sure that we are constantly prepared to carry out our first mission of providing patient care to our veterans in times of emergency. But we also look at the overall bigger picture of making sure that we're prepared to support the fourth mission, to provide support to our community partners and any type of a large-scale national emergency or disaster.
So do you get a chance to work with a lot of the county EOCs as far as that goes?
Absolutely, absolutely. The cornerstone of any successful emergency management operation is having those relationships with all of your community partners and everyone that may possibly be impacted by an emergency or disaster. So the best time to establish those relationships and build those ties is when the sun is shining, as I always say. You know, on a nice, beautiful day, we train together, we play together, we share information, we share assets to make sure that we know what to do when we ever have to do it, you know, real world.
I really feel like I'm talking to one of our guys, whether it be Pete or Billy at the Polk County EOC, because I've heard that speech, and it is. It's best to know the people you're working with on a bright sunshine day, because on a cloudy day, it's not a good day to meet, is it?
It isn't, and you know, every successful operation happens because of the relationships that are there prior to the event happening. And every emergency manager, regardless of whether you're in a large city or a small town, those are the first initial things that you learn, and it's kind of instilled in you, and it just, once you learn it, it always stays with you. And so we always communicate, we always work together, play together, and we share our toys.
Well, since we're in the middle of hurricane season, for those that might be new to the area, let's talk hurricane season. When does it usually start? When does it end? Let's talk the basics if we could.
The basics of hurricane season are this. It's an annual event. It runs from June till November of each year. And hurricanes, you know, it's a natural occurring event. They've been happening since Mother Earth existed, and they will always be there. The key thing to keep in mind is, in this current day and age that we live in, there's no such thing as a surprise hurricane. Ideally, we know when it's coming, we know when it's forming. We're tracking it from a standpoint of from what's a tropical depression to a tropical storm, and as it grows and it strengthens. So I try to express to everyone that, you know, if you look at it from that standpoint, hurricanes are easy because you know it's coming. And if you know it's coming and you have that guidance, just listen to what your emergency officials are telling you what to do, whether it's at the local level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level. If you listen to those guidances that are given, listen to the trainings that are given, follow the orders that are given, you're going to be fine. If an evacuation order comes in and says, we want you to evacuate prior to the storm coming in, evacuate. And everything will fall right into place. We can't stop a hurricane, but you can definitely prepare. And being a Floridian, it's something that you always need to be prepared for in the back of your mind, but also keep in mind that there are other events that can actually happen that could impact you.
One of the things that you talked about was the practice. The perfect practice makes perfect within the organization. Something that the folks can do, whether it be hurricane or severe weather. The preparation. What are some of the things that folks at home can do preparation-wise? Well,
the number one thing is to have a plan. And without a plan, everything's not going to go as expected. So to establish a plan, take a look at your family. If you have a family of 2, family of 3, or even if you're a single person, you want to make sure that you have a plan of what you're going to do in the event of a severe weather event. Again, hurricanes are known, they're tracked, we know they're coming. However, especially this time of year, we have the thunderstorms every afternoon. Torrential downpours of rain over a short period of time can create localized flooding, things of that nature. So know what your threats are to your area. Now, how will you determine what those threats are? It always starts at the local level. Reach out to your local emergency management team. Every city, county, they have them. Reach out to them, and they will actually guide you through the process of being prepared based off the threats from the hazard vulnerability analysis for your particular area that you actually live in or work in, and they will guide you through the process. From there, you can actually take a look at different websites from ready.gov to FEMA.gov, and there's lots of resources there that will kind of guide you through the whole process. But I believe for the average citizen at the local level, start with your local emergency management team. They have the resources, they have the training, and it's specific. They're focused on you. Your larger entities are focused on a larger scale.
Well, Travis, we got to take a break real quick, but when we come back, we want to talk a little bit more as far as preparation. We're going to talk kits. We're going to talk a few other things. Can you stick around?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The Home Depot Foundation and Team Depot are a 400,000 strong army of associate volunteers who work to improve the homes and lives of U.S. veterans. Recently, we caught up with a group of associates and volunteers that participated in a recent beautification project at the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital in Tampa.
I need 10 people that are going to build the wall with Brad.
But I need about 3 or 4 people before we get too carried away. That thing's got to be level. Only got to jig a little trough about that wide. The leveling, and it's not too bad over there. Just level it out, get it.
So who wants to level that out?
Just level that
4
out.
people.
Okay, today is phase 3 of a multi-phased project that we have here at the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital. We've been out here, this will be the 3rd time within about a year and a half, re-landscaping a lot of this spinal cord injury area, the common ground for the veterans to enjoy with their families when they come to visit, and just beautify the areas that the veterans share every day when they're here at the hospital.
As a corporation, we were able to, the main focus for us is to be able to give back to the veterans, whether it's redoing homes, changing lives, doing what we're doing here today, beautifying landscaping, to be able to give them something to see when they come out here with their families.
Each quarter we have associates come up from all the different stores to give back to veterans. They all have different stories. Some of them are veterans, some of them are their employees or their family members are veterans, their parents or brothers and sisters. If you talk to each one, they all have a story why they're here. Primarily give back for the Home Depot. It's one of our core philosophies as a company that we give back to the communities. Our focus in the last few years have been veterans. So this fits in right with our corporate directive and their own personal pride that they have to come and help veterans.
But you know, having beautiful surroundings and beautiful grounds and things like that where they can get out here and reflect and heal and that sort of thing is so very important. And the fact that you're out here doing this for the veterans makes all the difference in the world. You are making a difference. And it would be remiss if I did not say thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing. And I know this isn't the first time you've been out here. I think you were going to come 2 or 3 times. I think it's like the 5th time. So you keep coming back. And you wouldn't do that if you didn't think it meant something. So I know it does mean something to you. It means something to us, and it sure means something to the patients and their families. So thank y'all so very much.
Welcome back to today's Veteran. I'm Brian Lacey, standing in for James Williams. We're talking emergency management and hurricane preparedness, and in studio with us is Travis Garrett. Travis is the emergency management director for the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital. Thanks for sticking around. In our last segment, we were talking preparedness. Now, one thing that a lot of people really need to get together is a kit. And within that kit, what are some of the things that the folks should have in that hurricane safety kit?
Well, some of the basic things that you're going to have in a hurricane preparedness kit, or just your regular emergency preparedness kit, would be the basic fundamentals for life. A water supply. And again, how much water you're going to have. That's going to be based off of what your individual needs are. If you have a family of 1 or 2 or whatever the size of your family is, you want to make sure that you have at least 3 to 4 days of water to support your family. Food or nourishment. You want to make sure that you have food that can be prepared, that is easily prepared, that may not require a stove, so to speak, because you may not have electrical power. There are everything from MREs to heater mills. There are hundreds of different products out there that you simply just add water and they're self-heating. You want to make sure that you have enough food to provide at least 1 to 2 meals for yourself and your family members for 3 to 4 days. If you have pets, you want to make sure that you have food for your pets, and to include a water supply. If you have special family members, the young or the elderly, you want to make sure that you have, the food that they would need. And if you have someone that's on a special or restricted diet, you want to make sure that you have those supplies there. The key thing to keep in mind is that when you're building your actual preparedness kit, you want to make sure that it's what works for you and your family. There are a lot of vendors out there that have products that you can buy it, but it's not customizable. It's not tailored for you. So you want to take the time, and you want to make sure that you have the right resources there to make sure that you and your family and your pets are prepared to be self-sufficient for at least 3 to 4 days.
And it's good that you mentioned the pets, Travis, because not only in 2004 and during Hurricane Irma, there were situations that arose here within Polk County that animals were just kind of left behind. And one thing that we were talking about in the pre-interview is as hard as it may be, you were talking livestock too.
Absolutely, absolutely. In the event of a hurricane or any type of disaster, pets, domesticated animals, they're part of the family, in my opinion. They are, and they're integrated in. And if you love them, you take care of them. And if you're living in a rural community and you may have livestock or things of that nature, these are all, you have them for a reason. And they're there prior to an event because it's part of your way of life. And so you want to make sure that as you start to look at things and prepare your family, you want to make sure that you're protecting your assets, whether it be your livestock or your domesticated animals that are your pets. And you want to have a plan for them as well. And in preparing for a hurricane, again, if you just listen to what your local officials are directing you to do, stay abreast of the big picture and have a plan, it'll be very, very, very easy for you.
I want to talk shelters next, and especially those with medical situations. Let's talk special needs shelters. So let's talk the two different types of shelters and what the folks should be aware of.
Well, there are two types of shelters. You have your regular shelter for your regular population of people, but there will be special needs shelters. The difference between the two is that a regular shelter would be people that don't require one-on-one care, things of that nature. It's a place where you could go with your immediate family and you're going to go there. There are no extenuating medical conditions that will require additional care. A special needs shelter, those are the places where these are people that reside in our community that have medical conditions that need additional medical care to make sure that they have good quality of life during the event that's occurring. Every county has them. The key thing with that is, again, build your plan. Listen to what your local officials are directing you to do and pre-register. Don't wait until it's 24 hours before the storm's coming and you say, I think I need to go to that shelter. Listen to what your officials are saying, pre-register, make sure that you know where you're going to go. Shelters, sometimes the locations may change. Every year you have to take a look at this and make sure that you are aware of what to do, where to go, and who to contact. And ultimately you want to make sure that you're providing that level of care needed for those family members, those loved ones that need that special care. Your county officials are standing by to assist, but they will only know what you let them know.
Let's talk the VA hospital. Is that a good place to shelter?
Well, your VA hospitals are not shelter facilities. They absolutely are not. For our veterans that reside in the community around a VA hospital, ideally the first place that you have to go for your shelters would be your community shelters. That's where you're going to go, whether it be a regular shelter or a special needs shelter. Being a large hospital, just like all of your regular community hospitals, we don't shut down. It's continuous care. We have patients that are there, that are in the beds, that will actually ride out the storm with us. And we make sure that we are prepared to cover that and provide services to them. Ideally, for our hospital itself, we do have employees that are essential that will have to stay there for the duration of the actual storm if it's a hurricane coming. We do have a family reception plan where we will allow those employees who have family members that are going to be staying there, we will allow them to bring their family members in and they can have temporary refuge to be with their better half or the employee while they're there for the storm. But we are not a shelter. And that's the goal, is to make sure that everyone in pre-planning knows that where they need to go within their community, within the county, to go to a regular shelter or a special needs shelter.
Transportation, getting to a shelter? Let's talk that if we could, please.
Well, again, and this, I hate to say it over and over, but it goes back to your local emergency management officials. In the event of a known event happening, i.e. hurricanes coming in, all that information will be shared by your local emergency management officials, and there will be transportation set up to provide transportation for those personnel who don't have a reliable means of transportation to the shelter and from the shelter back to their homes. And again, the key thing with all these processes is pre-registration, contact early on with your local emergency management officials, and they will guide you through the processes that are there. What the processes that may be in place in Polk County may be different from Hillsborough County, and so that's why it's so imperative that you make contact early on and that you know what your local officials, what their plan is and what you're supposed to do so that you can get the services that you will need.
One of the things that we want to talk, we talked about making a kit if you're going to shelter in place. You're going to need that somewhat of a same kit if you're going to a shelter.
Absolutely correct. And again, the shelters are there. Think of it as a nice box. It's a nice building that's going to give you a survivability. You're going to have electricity, you're going to have water, you're going to have air conditioning, but it's not going to be a 5-star hotel. So you want to make sure that you have those resources in a cooler that you can take with you, especially if you have small children. You know, you want to make sure you have some comfort food because it will be a stressful event. And so if you know you have a small child that loves gummy bears, it wouldn't be a bad idea to place some gummy bears in that personal preparedness kit for the family, just to make that transition a little bit easier for yourself and for the small children. And the same with the elderly. If you're going to a special needs shelter, you want to make sure that you have the resources, those items that you need to make your stay as comfortable as you would need it to be. That's what you want to do.
One thing I want to talk about, and we see it along the highway, you know it's going to hit, it's going to be bad. You're not going to shelter in place, or you're not going to go to a shelter. An evacuation plan. Let's talk that if we could, please.
Absolutely. Well, if you're living in an area that is prone to flooding, whether it be coastal flooding or surge flooding, things of that nature, all of our evacuation routes throughout the state are already pre-identified. And again, it's reaching out early on to your local emergency management officials, and they will actually be able to take your physical address of where you reside at or where you work at, and they'll be able to guide you through the process to tell you this is the evacuation zone you're in, this is your evacuation route, and this is what the route that you would follow. The time to learn that route and the time to know this information is prior to the event. And so again, it's leaning forward early, making sure that you take responsibility for your own personal safety and that of your family and your pets, and make sure you know what to do and where to go before the event happens. Regrettably, no matter what the disaster is, there are a few people who will always wait to the very, very, very last minute. And you know, those citizens that do that, they're putting themselves at great risk and potential harm, as well as the first responders that may have to come out and try to provide aid to them if they need it. And for a known event, something like a hurricane, it's one of the things that as an emergency manager or a first responder, we want to make sure that we just try to get away from that, because it just puts a lot of challenges on the system itself and the resources you have in place.
And Travis, I think one thing that the folks at home may not know is at a certain point in time in the storm, let's talk response from first responders, because at a certain mile per hour, something's going to happen. What happens?
Absolutely. Well, if it's a hurricane that's inbound, at some point in time, conditions will deteriorate to a point where it is not safe for your first responders to get out there on the road to provide any type of aid or services that may be needed. And that's a tough call to be made, but it has to be made because, again, you don't want to send someone out, your first responders, into a condition that could be extremely dangerous with a low survivability rate for them. So your local emergency management officials, your elected officials will have to make that judgment call of when they will no longer offer services to those citizens that have opted to stay in that area. And again, this is it happens every single year. It's something that we want to avoid, but unfortunately, there's always going to be that one standout person that says, I'm not going, you know, until the very last minute. And unfortunately, if they ask for help after that line has been drawn in the sand, they're going to be on their own until after the event has happened.
I want to talk coming back in. When should you come back home?
Well, when do you come back home after an emergency or event has happened? You come back home when you are cleared to go back home. The key thing is everyone's definitely going to be worried about, how's my house? Is my house safe? Is it good to go after the storm has passed? Well, just because the storm has passed, it doesn't mean conditions are safe on the ground for the population to re-enter that area. Again, it's listening to your local emergency management officials. They will be making quick determinations on what areas are okay to enter back in so that you can get back home and get back to a normal routine of life. Power lines can be down. You have wildlife that can be displaced, especially if you're living in a rural area like Polk County. We have storm surge, things of that nature. You can have snakes, alligators, anything. And so your emergency management officials, your first responders, immediately after the storm has passed, they're going to go out and they're going to do surveys, and they're going to make determinations of what areas are safe to open back up for the general public. And even when those decisions are made to allow the public to return back home, you want to be very cautious because things are all over the place if it's a hurricane. There could be plywood, nails, things of that nature, and each year in the wake after a actual hurricane, there are hundreds of people that are sometimes injured and even killed with debris removal, things of that nature, or people being bitten by rattlesnakes or whatever it may be. So it's a really perilous time in the recovery phase after the storm has passed, and you really need to listen to your emergency management officials at the local level, and they'll guide you on what to do. But even when you're given that green light, proceed with caution.
We got about 30 seconds left, Travis. Finally, the last thing I want to talk is resources available to the folks during weather emergencies.
Well, the key thing to keep in mind, what everyone should have here in the state of Florida, you should have an emergency weather radio in your home. Especially here in the Central Florida region, this time of year, we're always subject to severe weather alerts. Everyone has a smartphone, your cell phone. You can actually register, go to ready.gov, you'll find the resources there where you can set up your early warning notification alerts if there's severe weather coming in. And you want to definitely make sure that no matter what, you have a personal preparedness kit for yourself, your family, your pets, and your elderly. Take the time now to prepare so you'll be ready for any event that may happen. Remember, it's just not hurricanes that can impact us. It could be anything. It could be zombies. We never know. So you want to make sure you got a plan.
The zombie apocalypse. That's
Absolutely.
the next show.
Absolutely.
Travis, it's been a blast. Time flies when you're having fun, and really, I had a great time, and thank you for the incredible information.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back out as many times as you need me.
For more information on hurricane preparation locally, go to www.polk-county.net/emergency-management. That's going to do it for this edition of Today's Veteran. I want to thank our guest today, Travis Garrett, but most of all, I want to thank you for joining us. Remember, for help and information regarding claims, benefits, and services available to veterans and their families, call the Polk County Veterans Service Office at 863-534-5220 or log on to the Polk County website at polk-county.net. I'm your host, Brian Lacey, standing in for James Williams, and we'll see you next month.